What's up, guys? It's D22-soso, Wayne Chiang, and this is Garza, aka JJ4D. We are of the Live of the Bike poker stream. We are regular commentators as well as owners of Live of the Bike, and this is the ultimate 2-3 no limit hold'em guide, specialized for the Los Angeles area. JJ De La Garza has been a veteran online and live. You want to tell us about your no limit history?
Yeah, first of all, Wayne, I want to point out that even though this is for 2-3, if you are in some soft live games, this will be applicable for 5-5 and 5-10. I spent the last few years of my career mainly playing 5-10, probably the last 5 years, playing 5-10 and bigger games when they would pop off at the bike. A lot of 5-5 still within that last 5 years as well, because the game at the bike is a deep game that kind of plays like a 5-10 if you get the straddle on. So, but these things that we're going to go over today, even though it's geared towards 2-3, if you are in soft games, this will be very applicable. So I started playing poker seriously in about end of 2007, took it very serious 2008 through 2011. We encountered Black Friday. I used to play multi-tables on full tilt. I played 1-2 no limit, never really jumped up bigger, would dabble in some 2-4, but 1-2 was my mainstay. Being a college kid, graduating college in 2011, I never played live poker really, besides like some sit and goes with friends. So having money stuck on full tilt poker from keeping most of my money on there, my net worth, being a college kid that didn't know any better, transitioning to live, I started playing 2-3 since I was like, all right, well, I don't know anything about live poker, so I'm gonna start from the bottom. Plus, most of my money was stuck online. So like I said, I started from the bottom, 2-3 no limit, and played that pretty much for about 2 months straight. Thank goodness I ran really hot and did very well and had a really high win rate, enough to within a couple months play 5-5, and within like 6 months from there to play 5-10. So the 2-3 is definitely still a beatable game, even though the rake is kind of high. So Wayne and I will be going over a bunch of stuff that will help you to win in those games. So it's pretty much kind of unfair that you and I are just giving away all the bread and butter and gold. I'm like playing those games for such a long time, but you guys have earned it by being subs to Live at the Bike.
Right. So I started no limit. I started 7-card stud and then limit hold'em, and then when the moneymaker boom happened, obviously all of us just went towards no limit. I started online, the $1, $2 in the LA area. There was a 3-5 $200 buy-in, which I played with JRB, a lot of other people, a lot of other name people, and we just went all the way up to about 10-20 no limit. I played as big as 51 on party poker. I played up to 10-20 no limit. Hollywood poker, 5100 live. I played up to 2550. And yeah, it's always a mainstay no limit hold'em. You have to have no limit hold'em in your arsenal. When I prop in night, a lot of times the 2-3 no limit is better than the 5-5. People have seen me there. They've seen me do well there, so I can't hide it. There are a lot of fundamentals and tips and tricks that JJ and I will go over, and it is definitely a beatable game. So we are going to do an ultimate $2, $3 no limit hold'em primer for you guys. All the stuff that we've learned. I'm almost at year 20. You're almost at year 15, right?
2008 was when I took it serious. Yeah, so around 13 years.
13 years. Yeah, so you're getting all the inside scoop. And you know us, we are all about practical information. You don't memorize stuff. You always have to adapt to the table situations and the players. First things first, game selection. It doesn't matter what stakes in the poker game is. You need good game conditions, right?
For sure. That's one thing that's been one of my strengths over the years is, seeing if there's a few tables going on at the bike, whether it's 2-3 or whatever limit, you just want to be in the best game possible, for sure. It's pretty common sense. Some players don't care. Depends what you're aiming for when you go to the casino if you're just there to have fun. But if you're there to maximize your time and your win rate, if you know there's a few action guys on the other table, get on that game. It's that simple. A lot of players don't do it. I still do it to this day. And case in point, sometimes after live at the bike games, we try to keep them really fun, especially the ante games. So, Wayne as the owner and does the scheduling, I don't want to put pressure on him to schedule the games, but I asked Wayne, hey, Wayne, can you put me on the list so I can play in a good game after the show? So Wayne obliges and puts me on the game, and I show up at the bicycle. I'll start my session later just to play in a good game. So same thing as in a 2-3 table selection, same thing as, you want to play where people are giving action, and you also want to give some action too. So
yeah, you want to definitely keep the table ambiance like very friendly. Don't be one of those sour people. I know we know it's hard when you're losing or things aren't going your way. It's hard. We all know, but just try, make a little bit of an effort to be better. So a couple signs.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were going to move on from that topic.
Oh no, just to tell if there are action players at the table. Look at the big stacks. It's 100 big blind buy-in. I believe it's a 60 big blind, 100 big blind buy-in. 30 big blind.
Right?
One to 300. Yeah. No, you're right. It's 1 to 300. So it's a 30 big blind, 33 big blind to 100 big blind buy-in.
It might be different wherever you're at too. If you're watching this country, but go ahead, Wayne. I'm sorry.
So if it's 100 big blind cap and somebody has 600 big blinds, look at how he's putting money in the pots. If he's playing a lot of hands, if he's putting money in when he doesn't have a good hand, like pre-flop or post-flop, he got lucky to get that stack and he's willing to put money in. Those are guys you really want to play with. Also,
for sure.
People who open limp out of position or just play out of position a lot in general. You want to be playing against those guys.
Yeah, I would say some quick tips. If you're a regular in the casino, you know which players give action and you want to play with. If there's drinking, for me, even if the game is not amazing, but they're straddling, I prefer to be in that game. If people are straddling, they're going to be gambling more. I like the straddle. Also, in the sense of give action, even if you don't give action financially, give action, have drinks at the table. You can enjoy conversations with the players. Like that's another form. Like it doesn't always have to be financial, especially if you're playing with recreational players. Also, they're there to have fun, so you have to make the environment fun. So if you are not giving action in one form, you can also give action in different forms. You can merge the three, give a little more action than you usually would, have more conversations, have a drink or two. Like that's all forms of giving action and making the games fun, having a good ambiance to the table. People that know me in LA, some people may think that I give some action. Most players think that I play solid, which is probably the more of the truth is that I'm playing super solid. So I make sure that I give action in other forms of the table, whether that's like I mentioned, all of the above. So just make sure you're doing some of those things so players do want to play with you.
Yeah. Another thing is if there are multiple tables, which frequently there are multiple tables at 2-3, you want to scout out the tables to see which one's the best one and, table change to, the best one. It's, oftentimes the best game is the most fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's common sense. And like, you'll see it on tweets, like table selection, game selection is the most important thing, or one of the top 5 things you should be doing. But like, I feel like people ignore it. And to my benefit, I'm glad people, ignore it so I can get on the table that I like. But it's insanely important to it's just important to maximize your time. So if it's the analogy I've given people that I've coached before, it's like pretty much, let's say you're making $20 at this job, but if you drove down the street 1 block away, you're getting $28 an hour. Would you do it? They're like, heck yeah. So it's the same difference with table selecting, but people get stubborn. Some people, if they lose a few pots, they're like, I'm going to stay here till I beat this player. I get it. It's about not having an ego and just making the most of your time.
Right. And another underrated seat selection thing is you ideally don't want aggressive people to your left, because aggressive people to your left, a lot of times, sometimes if somebody's passive or loose, you want to isolate them by raising. If you have aggressive people to your left, they can 3-bet you and take the initiative away, and you never know, they might have a real hand, they might not have a real hand. And you definitely want people who are looser to your right, so they're putting in money with bad hands, and then you get paid off on your better hands.
For sure. Shout out to David Chiang, longtime crusher in LA, friend of mine, who helped me with some coaching back in the day. And so there's old school seat selection, right, where you want to be directly to the left of the spot at the table. And then there's new school, which David Chan taught me. And I hate that I'm revealing all this, but like back in the day, I used to get so frustrated when there was nits at the table, but the new advanced form of table or seat selection is you want the tightest players to your direct left. And even if the spot at the table is like 3, 4, 2 seats over to your right, you want the tight players to your left so that you can be stealing blinds, you can open wider, you can isolate the rec, even if he's 3 spots down, lighter, and you know that the players to the left are not going to be fighting you, so therefore you can open more hands. And you know that when you 3-bet the rec or he limps, you ISO, that you're just not going to be getting played back at. And when you do get played back at, they got it, so you can overfold. So that's just advanced seat selecting. Also, it looks good that you're not just sitting directly to the spot. I mean, unless it works out perfectly where you got the 2, 3 players tight to your left. The recreational players in 2020 know that when you sit directly to their left, they know what you're doing and they don't like it. So also it's out of respect. You don't really want to be sitting directly to the left of the guy who's giving action, because they know what's going on. These players are not dumb, unless like they're just an insane gambler that you saw come from, the baccarat room. Sorry for hitting my camera. But unless you see that they're just coming and they're just splashing, like the recreational players are smart and they don't like that.
Yeah, and I've played 2-3 several times on Live at the Bike all the way up to 25-50. So if you ever need reference for my play, all of my most meaningful hands are on my YouTube, and you can go back in the archives and just watch how I played 2-3 no limit on there. So pre-flop. I commentate, and I actually love commentating the small stakes games like 2-3 and 5-5, especially 2-3, because then I could shed insight on what people are doing wrong, and it's very easy to just like fix certain things, and then they just start doing better. One of the things that happened was somebody limped under the gun with 7s, and I said, you fold this, and the chat goes crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? You fold 7s under the gun. First of all, you cannot limp because the drop is 6 + 1, so it's $7 by the river. So with the blinds 2, 3, and 3, there's $8 in there. If you open limp and it gets limped and it gets folded around, there is $8 in the pot and 7's going in the rake on the drop. So you put in $3, and at most you win $1 if it's just checked around. So if you do play it, you raise. But even in the 2-3 no limit game conditions, which are softer than high stakes and mid stakes, it's probably recommended you fold, because any of the 8 players after you can wake up with a better hand than 7s, or a hand like competitive with 7s, like ace king or ace queen, and they could just flop the overcard. So you're going to be playing out of position with this hand this entire way. I recommend you fold it. JJ?
Okay, so if we're going like ranges at theory, what is 7 supposed to do? 7s would be exactly the cusp hand. I'm probably opening it still. If I'm at a tough table, I'm going to fold it always. If I'm at a loose table with a bunch of racks or a soft table, I'm definitely probably going to open it because I don't assume I'm going to get three bet. So it just depends on your table dynamic, pretty much. So like I said, at theory, it's the cusp hand. Um, since we are talking about opening ranges, the way that you crush 100 big blind poker, simple. You play tight, you play snug. It's not sexy, it's not fancy. You you play not fun nitty poker. Nitty's the wrong word. Just solid poker, and you crush at 100 big blinds. It's the reason why someone like Garrett Adelstein probably hates 100 big blind poker. Andy hates 100 big blind poker because what makes them so good is playing deep stack and playing a bunch of mixture of hands that they can make it work because they're 300 to 800 big blinds deep. But as soon as you put the 100 big blind cap on a game, you really need to play solid fundamentals, or you just get whacked by the rake. You get whacked by playing hands that do not do post flop well, especially multi-way, because you're going to be playing a lot of multi-way pots in 2-3. So if you are playing a loose range in 2-3 with high rake, multi-way, you're just going to get stomped out by better hands.
Yeah, totally agree. So just like, in my default situation, early position, I tend to want to play tighter. I will never open limp. Even if theoretically it can be a plus EV play, it's just like if you limp and it gets folded around and, the house takes $7, it's just like, not good. Like, why not even fold it? Or just if you're gonna play come in raising, don't open limp, because if you raise and you take down the blinds, the house only takes $1. So that's a big swing.
Sure.
So pre-flop, based on 2020 contemporary charts, like JJ said, sevens are at the cusps. I usually like nines or better, early position, under the gun, ace queen off, like ace 10 suited, king queen suited. That's about my opening range early position.
Yeah, that seems good. Seems solid. You could throw in the queen jack suited, maybe the king jack suited. Like I said, those are, at theory, you're probably supposed to be opening the queen jack and the king jack suited, but it depends on your table, right? At theory just means if everyone's playing perfect. You're playing 2-3. People are not playing close to perfect. They're going to be playing, even the very good players are still probably going to be not playing that great, because if they were really good, they would be playing bigger, right? So you can wiggle with your opening ranges on the edges. So if you find some pre-flop charts that you like that are solved, you can, which are easy, just put it in Google. There's going to be tons.
Yeah.
You can just edge the borderline. So if king jack suited is the border and you're at a tougher 2-3 table, take out the king jack suited, open the king queen suited. If you are at a looser table or an soft table, you can always open the king jack suited. If the sevens is the cusp, you can always open it as at a soft table. If you think it's a tougher table at a 2-3 game, do not open the sevens. Just put it in the muck. It's that simple. So tougher table, open a little more snug. Softer table, you're able to open the cusp hands.
Right. So we would classify, at least I classify tougher table as one more experienced people or people 3-betting. If there isn't much 3-betting going on, like you said, you could open stuff like king jack suited, queen jack suited that play well multi-way, and just like, you don't have to be folding to aggressive 3-bets all the time. And the other thing is with big bet games like pot limit on no limit, one of the things that I've adopted, more in the last few years, it's 2020 now, when you start off a table, you just don't need to open early position. It's like not a big deal. Like you could wait and see the game conditions develop after like 3 or 4 orbits. If the guys are playing, ultra aggressive, you could tone down those hands like queen jack suited, king jack suited. And then if it's like very passive, then you could tone up those hands and, go from there. Like you just don't have to come in firing right away. You can just like wait to see how things develop in big bet games.
Yeah, I forget who said this, but early in my career, I remember someone saying you don't really want to get stuck early in a session. I mean, I don't think about this nowadays. I just play. But at the beginning of my career, I would think about that. Like, I will be less gamble averse at the beginning of my session and try to figure out the table and then go from there, because you don't really want to start your session down a buy-in or two buy-ins within the first half hour, and then you're just trying to play catch up, you know. So if you want to play a little more solid at the beginning of your session, especially at 2-3, if you know it's a gamble spot, or you know this guy has a strong hand but you have a flush draw and you're not getting the right price, probably best to just fold in that instance. I don't know if I strayed off topic a little bit there, but felt like that might be fitting.
Yeah, no, it's fitting. And the next step would be mid position. So I don't know, something like under the gun +2 all the way through the low jack. I also recommend you do not open limp, but if there are a couple limpers ahead of you, you can limp things like, you know, ace-x suited or medium pairs. You tend to not want to go all the way to the bottom pocket pairs, because even if you do have odds or implied odds to flop a set, people don't necessarily realize just because you flop a set does not mean you win the hand. You could get caught set under set, or a 5-card hand like a straight or flush can beat you.
Sure. Over limping is something I put a lot into my game over the years. At one point, it was mainly just like some pocket pairs and stuff like that. Nowadays, I limp behind, especially in the cutoff with the pretty wide range. Someone limps, and I know that they're pretty sticky, and I don't want to put a ton of money in pre-flop, and I'm okay with playing multi-way with the blinds. I might limp the queen 10 off on the button, over limp. I might over limp the jack 8 suited instead of isolating it. What I'm telling you is some of these hands I might isolate, and I might just limp behind. For instance, let's say I'm playing against Wayne and he's really sticky. I don't really want to re-isolate the queen 10, especially if there's a couple limpers. I'm just going to try to flop big in position. Let's say now instead of Wayne, I have someone like who is very tight. Let's just say Wheeze, who plays very tight, limps, and I'm going to limp the jack. I'm going to raise the queen 10 this time because I've seen Wheeze limp fold, right? So this time I'm just going to isolate and put in more money because Wheeze limp folds. So I've noted, okay, Wheeze will limp fold, whereas Wayne will not. But both of these hands I want to see in position. I got the button. It's still going to be plus EV to see this hand in position. So I've kind of geared over limping a lot of my strategy. I've never been an open limp type of person, unless it's like a crazy table where I might go for a limp raise.
Yeah.
I might throw in a limp. If it's a crazy table and I got the pocket threes and we're playing 5-10, I might just limp the small pocket pair because I know someone's going to bump in and I'm going to get the right price to play. Even though it's probably not theory correct, it still works. So those little ones, but you got to kind of like know what and why you're doing it. You can't just open limp just to open limp. So I know, okay, I'm going to open limp this hand, and as long as it doesn't go raise 3-bet, I'm going to call and try to set mine, right? So if you're doing everything with a purpose and kind of with the strategy behind it, it can work. But if you're just open limping, you're like Wayne said, you're going to get crushed by the rake, and you're just playing. You're playing a strategy that is not going to win.
One of the things that I tell people when I coach is, when you play a hand, who is paying who? So you want to be the guy where the other guy pays you and you're not paying the other guy. This is why Ace King is such a powerful hand. Well, aside from aces and kings, Ace King is such a powerful hand because Ace Queen is paying you, King Queen is paying you. So when you enter the pot with Ace King and these other guys can't fold, they're higher in hands because they don't think about what your opening range is, they're always paying you. This goes to the theory of like mid position. You don't necessarily want to play stuff like king jack off or queen jack off coming in, because everybody is going to be playing hands that beat you. Everyone's going to play the ace king, everyone's going to play the ace queen, everyone's going to be playing the king queen when you're playing in those kind of positions. So it's especially dangerous to play the offsuit versions. And the suited versions, you could push push the edge in your favor because they have more playability. Because you can flop 3 to a flush, you can flop 4 to a flush, you can flop 3 to a straight, 4 to a straight. You can progress to the turn in river. They have higher playability to realize their equity. And when you make a nutted hand like a flush or a straight, you can get paid by one pair of hands or even sets. In which, if you have the offsuit version, you're limited more, usually more towards straights unless it's a 4 flush. So how do you select your hands in mid position?
I mean, I've done a lot of studying over the years. Like I said, my host strategy, I've said it over the years, I play a balanced strategy. So those charts you see live and online, I'm pretty much following them to a T. And then I'm deviating exploitively. So, like I said, if the chart says open the king, let's say middle position, the king queen off, all right, I'm opening it at 100% from the U2 or low jack, wherever it says to open it, but I will open looser or tighter depending on the table. If it's an easy table, I'm always opening it. If it's a tough table, for instance, I have the king queen off and I'm under the gun 2 or the low jack, it says open the charts, but I got Joel to my left and I got Jerry to my left, and I know they're gonna 3-bet me and they're gonna make my life miserable. Since you guys know them on Live at the Bike, they're both good winning players. I'm not gonna open the king queen off. If I have players that are never gonna be 3-betting me and I can get away with opening that hand, I will open it at 100% frequency. So you want to get good at poker, you got to put in the time, you got to study, you got to know ranges, and then you got to pay attention in game. I know it's tough. I've been guilty of it on my phone too much. I pass by Wayne on his phone too much when he's playing. But you got to be in the game. You got to be in the mix if you really want to win. You got to be like Andy, which I am guilty of. I'm hardly in the zone like Andy. But if you want to look at someone who's in the zone, look at Andy play. Garrett, he's chatty on stream, off stream. Garrett's not chatty. You can ask Wayne. We pass by the room. Garrett has his headphones on. He's not chatting. He puts on a show for you guys. He's in the zone. He's trying to maximize. So what I mean by maximize, you have to know the players to your left. You have to know the player at the table. You have to know the game dynamic. If you are not aware of all this, how are you going to know whether it's a soft table? How are you going to know whether to open tighter or looser depending on the game, unless you're in the zone and you're paying attention to the dynamics?
Yeah, I agree. It's ideal to be paying attention. I'm guilty of not always paying attention.
I mean, I think 90% of the pros are. I'm guilty of it. Some days I really try to put down my phone like this in game. So I have it like this, right? And if you see me on my phone, it's usually to take notes for the most part, but I can be guilty of scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through whatever while I'm playing too. I'm not perfect. It's something that I'm aware of, and I just like if you're meditating, you try to bring yourself back to the breath. If I find myself guilty, I'm like, hey, it's all good. Try to pay attention. That's it. Catch yourself in the moment. Hey, I should be paying attention. And it's tough when you're playing a 10-hour session, and you're playing one table and the game gets boring. And, so I understand it's tough, but this is what makes probably someone who's a winning player or a losing player is just trying and paying attention and staying off the phone and knowing the game dynamics, the seat selection, the players to your left, whether you can open this hand or it's not a winning opening hand. Because if you're opening this hand and you got Jerry and Joel to your direct left, you're not winning. That is not a profitable open anymore. So you got to use your instincts. You got to learn. First of all, you got to learn the ranges that are correct. Then you got to learn the players at your table. I'm lucky enough to mainly play at 2 casinos, so I know the player pool very well at the 2 casinos I play at. For instance, I'm playing at the other casino, and there's a bunch of European kids at my table, and there's 2 or 3 to my left. I am not opening the marginal open because I know that marginal opening hand is no longer a winning hand because these European kids are using the same strategy as me. They may be one notch better than me. They may be one notch below me, but there's not going to be much money to be made by opening this mediocre hand.
Right. And then the last three slots, the hijack, the cutoff, and the button, if it's full to you, that's when you can open up your range, really, because you're likely going to have position on the blinds. Or if you're on the button, you're guaranteed to have position. So then you could steal the blinds, in which the drop's only going to be $1 if you successfully steal the blinds. And if the blinds call, now you're in position with ideally a highly playable hand.
Sure. If you're ever going to have a sizing differently that you use, probably put more money when you're on the button. Just makes sense, right? You play more hands in position. You want to put more money in when you have position. In any game, having the last option to see what your opponents do first, whether it's chess, pretty much any sport, you get the second say. You're always going to have that advantage. Same as poker. I've said this, how I feel about position over 10 times, probably to you, Wayne. I use the analogy as the Star Wars 3, the final scene between Anakin when he becomes Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan tells Anakin, it's over, I got the higher ground, which is position, and Anakin says, you underestimate my powers, which much players do out of position. They're like, you don't know how good I am at poker. What does Obi-Wan do every time? Chops him down. Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Essentially the same thing as position. You want to be playing in position. You're going to have an edge. You're going to be able to chop down your opponents more often than not by just having, not only, you don't even have to have a skill advantage. Hopefully you do, but if you just have positional advantage, you should be just winning money long term by being able to see what your players do first. So
there was an Around the Felt with Dan, Zach, and myself when Dan was talking about heads-up poker, and he was asked, how bad does a player have to be for Dan to win if he always is out of position? And Dan responded, pretty bad. So even a player with a caliber of, as Dan, Zach, if he's playing out of position, he needs the guy in position to be just like really bad in order to.
Oh, there was that dude on Full Tilt, Grimstar, what's his name? Grinaldi. I forget his first name. But what he used to do is he used to sit and play the button
and then leave
and sit out. And people hated him. He might have got banned, but I mean, there's a term called grimming. You know, if you do that, grimming. Yeah, so online, right? So I like to start tables online, and players have got mad at me, and they're like, yo, give me the button. And I'm like, all right, I'll give you the button this time, but don't sit me on a table. Let a recreational player sit, then you sit, you know? So usually online, I'll give them that one time, because everyone will be like, yo, button, or can I have the button? And I'm like, yeah, but next time don't sit me heads up. Like, I'm not here to play a reg, you know, I'm here to like wait for someone to jump in and let's start the table, you know? I know we went off topic. We're back at the button and position. So anyways, off topic. If we're going to edit this, you can edit that out, Wayne. But you want to be playing in position. You want to be piling the money when you're in position. It's like the oldest thing in the book, but it's the most relevant thing that you want to be doing. What was the math? You told me the math before, Wayne, on the, maybe it was Dan.
Probably Dan. I don't know. I don't know. If you asked me the question, I might know the answer, but you can.
There's like how much your money is worth on the button, compared if you're playing heads up, or it's mainly in heads up, but your money is worth, like, if you always had the button, you're getting like, I don't want to say the math, but it's significant that
I don't know the math, but I know it's just big. Like, the out of position guy has a significant disadvantage. If the in position guy puts in money inefficiently, whether it's on draws or over folds or blows the pot at a disadvantage, you can, win out of position, but it's very contingent on the guy in position misplaying a lot of, theory moves in poker. One of the underrated things that I don't publicize, and you guys have a treat of listening to it here in the Live at the Bike archives, hand reading when people limp. there's only so many categories of hands that people are going to limp. One is like usually offsuit Broadway, ace-x suited, low pocket pairs or medium pocket pairs, and suited connector or suited cards. So in these 5 categories, if you see people open limp and you do not see one of these categories, you can automatically presume that's one of those other categories. And then when those categories miss the flop, you could just like bet with any 2 cards in position and take it down. So that's
good.
something that's been happening since 1020 no limit.
Off Broadway is a big chunk of them for sure. If they're a tighter player, they're probably limping some pocket pairs only and stuff like that. But yeah, you got to see what your opponent's limping in with for sure. And that goes back to paying attention. If you're off your phone, that's the only way you're going to figure out, what their hands are when it gets to showdown.
And another thing is when the flop is, say, 1 card and 2 low cards, like 2 wheel cards, and they call, they can always have like ace-x suited with the wheel draw. And that's something a lot of people overlook. That's more prominent. You see it more often in the limit form games. And Durr and Phil Ivey have a hand. And again, this I'm only going to say this in the archives. I'm not going to say this in the public situation where Phil Ivey has ace deuce and Durr has 6-7, and 3-4-5 ends up coming out. But what ace deuce does is you have to bet in order to try to get 6-7 to fold. So if the 3-4-5 comes out, then you do not get cold decked. And that's something that if you look this video, it's a famous hand. If you
This
look
is
at
a
YouTube, it was Patrick Antonius, Phil Ivey, and
I feel like these players wouldn't be limping in with those hands though.
no, they won't. But the point was the ace deuce has to bet the flop in order to try to get 6-7 to fold. But Durr had 6-7, he didn't fold, and it is mentioned in the comments. What's going on is you do have to bet these wheel draws a lot of times in order to get like hands that will cooler you to fold, which is oftentimes like ace higher kicker or the higher straight draws. So secrets. Now post-flop play, one thing you do want to notice is when your opponents see the flop, are they very sticky or do they just fold if they don't have a nutted hand? That's very huge. So JJ knows me. I probably c-bet, or I used to. I've adjusted now, but when I first came back on No Limit like a few years ago, I was probably c-betting at too high of a frequency because I was used to people, or I want to test people to fold to see if they fold on the flop, in which I think many people nowadays are stickier than they used to be. So it's advised to tone down the continuation betting. So what do you think for flop play? What are things to notice?
I haven't been playing 2-3 in quite some time, so I can speak from 5-5 terms, I guess. I would say c-betting is probably still making a ton of money. Obviously, don't be c-betting at 100% frequency, but just know why you're differing your c-bet sizing. So, for instance, if you are gonna, let's say you open 6-5 in position and the big blind calls and the board comes out Jack 5 deuce, that's a board you should be betting at 100% frequency because it's a rainbow. Now you guys know it's rainbow. You should be and it's hard to connect that board. But let's say you have the 6-5 suited on there. You want to bet something like 1/3 pot on that board. Why are you betting 1/3 pot? Because it's more for defending equity. So if someone has the 9-10, the king 8 off, you deny equity from 2 overs, which has essentially like 22% equity, something like that. So that's why you're c-betting those type of hands. Even if you were to bet something weaker on Jack 5 deuce, even if you bet a deuce, you opened deuce 3 suited, which you probably shouldn't be opening on the button, but you opened it. You want to be defending equity. Whereas if the board was something like Jack 9 4, 2 spades on there, and you have something like, let's say Queen Jack, let's say King Jack. So you're going to want to be betting a bigger sizing on that board particular because there's some draws. So just know why you are picking the sizing that you are picking the sizing for when you are C betting. That's pretty important. Know why you are C betting. Book, when I thought I started getting good at poker, I think it came out in 2002, 2012-ish. It was by Beluga Whale. Check it out. I've talked about it. It's called Easy Game, and he talked about why are you betting. So this is very important at 2-3. And even when I played online, I would just C bet and I would just bet, or I would look at my HUD and it would say this person folds this much, so I just bet. But after, when I started playing live poker, Easy Game, it said know the reason for betting. 1, are you value betting? 2, are you bluffing? And 3, defending equity. So when you are putting money in the pot, no, okay, Jack 5 deuce, rainbow, 6-5. Am I betting as a bluff? You're not really going to get better to fold. You're not going to get better 5 to fold on the flop, and you're not going to get pocket 6s to fold plus, right? So no, you're not bluffing. Are you value betting? Kind of tough to be value betting a 5 there. So what are you doing when you are betting the Jack 5 deuce board? You are betting to defend equity, right? It could be maybe a slight value bet too, because you're going to get called by worse. So when you know that you are defending equity, what sizing are you trying to choose for that? You're trying to choose a sizing that's meant to defend equity. Now, if you bet pot on the Jack 5 deuce board, are you defending equity with that bet sizing? Possibly, but you are also inflating the pot. If he has a Jack, you're going to get smashed with that sizing. So you have to know how to categorize your hands and how to pick the sizing that's appropriate and know why you're betting. That's so important. When I explain poker to newer players, I'm like, well, why did you bet? Are you value betting? Are you bluffing? Are you defending equity? Those are the 3 main reasons. Poker is so complex, but if you just understand this simplicity, you just get better almost instantly. Because if you are trying to get a Jack to fold by the river, which people don't usually fold top pair, no, you're going to have to go bet big, probably over bet. So if you went small bet, small bet, small bet as a bluff, doesn't accomplish anything, right? So you have to know if you're categorizing your hand correctly. Value bet, bluff, defending equity, pick the right sizing. Because if you pick the wrong sizing for bluff and you're betting too weak, you're never going to get any hands to fold, right? And if you have a strong hand and you put your opponent on a decent medium to good hand, then you know you can go bet big, value. So that's really important at the 2-3 level to know how to categorize your hands and to pick the right sizing. Hopefully that was pretty well broken down. I know I was repetitive. That's kind of what I do for important stuff. I break it down for you guys to understand easily.
So you had an example here of something like always checking back hand, like pocket jacks on queen 7-6 rainbow.
Yeah, so that's just the same lines as categorizing your hand. You want to be able to, so this is more like a game theory balanced strategy, right? The 2 jacks. When you bet the queen, what was it, queen 6-7 board?
Queen 6-7 rainbow, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're betting jacks there, what are you really accomplishing, right? Are you bluffing with the jacks? No. You definitely have a middling hand. So are you defending equity? If you opened and you got called from the big blind, most likely they don't have ace king, right? Maybe they have 1 over on that board. So you're not defending equity, and you're not bluffing. So if you are betting, you are value betting. But you also don't need to put extra money in the pot because it's still a middling hand. It's still middle pair. So you don't necessarily need to get value from that hand on the flop. You can check back the flop, you can check back the turn and go for a river street. Now, if your player is stickier and the turn is a deuce and he checks again, now guess what? On the turn, you have more information that your opponent does not have a queen. So you can bet turn for maybe a 40% sizing. If there's $10 in the pot, you can bet $4, you get $5. And guess what? The river is a 10. So you're like, hey, this my opponent checked twice. He's probably weak when he calls the turn. I can get another street. What does my opponent's hand look like? It looks like a sticky 6 or 7. So I want to get called. We bet 5 on the turn. There's $20 on the pot by the river. Now I want to get called by the 6 or 7. Guess what? I'm going to bet $6 or $7, about a third of the pot, and I'm going to get called by the 6 or the 7. So in a way, by checking back the jacks on the flop, you get more information. You didn't need to inflate the pot, and now you can go for the appropriate value from worse on later streets. Whereas, let's say you have a queen on the flop, right? Let's say you have queen 10. You can also check that back so you don't get cooler by a stronger, even though it's unlikely, a stronger queen, like king queen or queen jack, and you have the queen 10. So when you check back that flop, you always get a call. Even when the river and turn gets scary, you get a call blind. Call, I got a top pair type hand. It just makes poker so simple. So if you ever see me on live at the bike and you see me check back like a strongish hand, it's like just so JJ can play blind poker on the turn and river and go call, and pick off bluffs. So that's how you balance your range. But back to the jacks and the first topic, that's more just a middling strength hand, knowing how to categorize your hands from strong, middle, weak, no showdown. Those are good bluff candidates, especially if they have good removal. Middling strength hands can go for value later, but mainly want to just get to showdown. And when you have those really strong hands, those are your strong category hands. You want to go bomb, make the money.
Yep. It's pretty much an underrated, and I see this often in 2-3 and 5-5 too. Like when you're out of position and you flop a set, one thing people do is check, it goes checked around, check again, it gets checked around, and then the river is just like it's something comes out, and then they just panic bet because it was checked around. Like a lot of times, I know my good friend Sean Snyder had this similar case on Live at the Bike. Like you have to check the third time and give your opponents a chance to bet, because if you bet out, they never had anything anyway. Based on the way the board developed, they still won't have anything to call. So you need to see how you need to give your opponents a chance to bluff at it. And if they had nothing, they weren't calling anyway. So that's just a common thing that I see at the lower stakes out of position.
Yeah, see, for instance, in that instance, I might bet the turn. I might try to go for the double check, or not the double check raise, the check raise on the turn, the delayed check raise, I guess. Sure. And for me, I never feel bad when it doesn't go as planned.
You should not feel bad.
You know what? Now these players are going to know that I have a strong range and I'm capable of checking good hands. So if they're trying to bluff, they're going to second guess that, because they know that I'm tricky and I have a balanced strategy, and I have some strong hands when I check, and I have some strong hands when I bet, and it just makes you tough to play against. You know, I never feel bad when I'm playing against a strong opponent. We'll throw Jerry and Joel in there because I like them both and they're both good. And I check a hand and they check and they're like, ooh, you didn't get it. And I'm like, yeah, sure, you're right. And it sucks that I didn't win as much money in this moment. But you know what? You and I both know that I have strong hands, and you can't just value bet those rivers. Because if you try to do that, I'm going for a check raise. And sometimes I'm going to check raise when I have some good removal as a bluff too. So it makes you just a tough player to play against, knowing how to categorize your hands and also balancing your ranges.
So the next topic is controlling emotions, not tilting in the game. You know, I think JJ and I both have decent reputations for not tilting very much. I can almost confidently say in almost 20 years, I have like my F game like less than 5 times in my life. There's, you know, many witnesses in my career. So the best option if you're feeling emotionally compromised is to take a break. Your F game in your career will be more impactful than your A game. I had to tweet about this on controversial opinions.
Good. I don't know if I can say, obviously I'm biased, but I don't tilt poker wise. Live. Online's been different because things are just flying at you. Lot tougher online. As much as I owned not tilting live, playing back online has still been tough. What are we, about 7 months into this pandemic? And still, I can still fire off some bad words, get frustrated. It's more rare now. Tilting is very costly. Players at the bicycle that I play with know that I just don't tilt. I might get a little whiny from time to time, but that's more like when I'm comfortable playing with players that I like. Like, let's say I'm playing in an anti-game after the stream and I get coolered or I play a hand bad, like, and let's say David Lou's at the table and Ramsey and let's say Captain Jack, the players that know me, DJ Melody, right? They know how I play, or they know how I am, and I consider all of them like my friends or acquaintances because we see each other so often. I feel like I can be myself and get a little whiny, which is not good. Don't whine at the poker table. But since they're my acquaintances and like we all know how each other are, I don't mind. I'm just like, oh, I'm so bad. I can't believe I play. I'm like, you know, where I won't do in normal poker settings because I don't think that's good. But I'm comfortable with those guys. But it's not necessarily that I'm going to tilt off money. It's just like kind of like things that I would say inner monologue. I'm comfortable enough with those guys that I just let it out. Like, oh, that was so bad. You know, I play that hand so bad. Oh my gosh. You know, so like it's a way of letting off steam, which I would keep inside usually. Don't whine at the table. Don't be the poker brat, guys. Unless you have 15 bracelets, you cannot whine at the table.
Even if you do.
That's fine. He can whine. Or if you're playing with like somewhat like people that you consider your friends, they know how you are. They don't mind. They're gonna poke fun at you. That's fine. It's in good fun. But yes, don't tilt. It's like Wayne said, it's going to be probably your most costly league to be able to play good for a month straight and then have those 2 sessions where you just tilt off 800 big blinds total of those combined nights. That's a lot of buy-ins that now you're probably, even if it was 600 big blinds that you tilted off, like that's probably you're not having a winning month, even if you're a very good player.
Learning you must stay ahead of the curve, joining a training website, talking to friends that are winning players about hand histories, and of course subscribing and watching Live at the Bike.
Sure. I mean the best way you're going to learn, to be honest, is learning from training sites. Live at the Bike you're watching right now, you're already trying to get ahead of the curve. This is the same stuff that Wayne and I would be coaching to players that are newer to the game or just need some greasing up on some of the stuff. Some of the stuff is gold, even if I was listening to someone talk about this, right? So yes, training sites are very important. Having a group of friends. I have a few guys that I just will send hand history to directly weekly, and they help me out. I don't have an ego in that. If I think someone's a good player and they can help me out, I love having a set of eyes to look at a hand history. What am I missing? I think that's fine.
Yeah, I've sent you Jared Grainer, some of my other buddies, no limit hands, and just get feedback. And sometimes like you've mentioned to me, I see skeletons under the closet, and I play hand standard, and because I lost the hand, I feel like something was wrong. But we have to get friends and peers to objectively tell you.
Yeah, that's someone put out a tweet like that the other day, I think. Who was that? You probably saw the tweet. It was something like getting friends along the way is just as important. Oh, who was it? I just read this tweet a couple days ago. But it was something along the lines, and I want to give credit to this person, but it was along the lines of, even though poker is thought of as a solo, not sport, but a solo game, all your friends along the way have helped get you there.
I remember the tweet. I don't remember who it is. I could look it up, but it's okay.
I feel the same way, that like even though you're on your own, you're at the table, but like all my friendships throughout poker have impacted me, especially if they're good players, have impacted me greatly to be where I'm at today, to be able to bounce those ideas, rethink my ideas, put your ego down to ask for some help, and learn some of, because let's say I'll just throw out names. Let's say Wayne is good at value betting. One of my friends, Weeze, is good at bluffing. Someone else is good at categorizing hands. Someone else is good at table selection. Someone else is good at this. So if I'm talking to all these guys who I think are good at different aspects of poker, I'm taking a little knowledge from him, a little knowledge from him, a little knowledge, and boom, that just is making me a better poker player altogether. So even if they're not the best poker player, but they're good at something and you like what they're doing at the table and you befriend them and you implement it in your game, A+ for you.
And a lot of elite players change groups. There's one player who's not, he's a known, but not super famous. I don't think he's been on television much. I could say he's from Sweden. He's not Isildur. He's switched groups at least 4 times. So, and he's still one of the top players. You could see Phil Galfon's thread. He's still in the mix, and or the Run It Once threads, and I commented on that. So you have to just be honest with your goals. If you want to become higher up there, you may not your current group may not be good enough, and you need to up your game and be honest with yourself where you're at as well. There's other people are doing it. They jump crews.
Sure. And you know what, and I do have a little advantage, obviously, because I do live at the bike. But any person that I've ever, I think there's been one person in my whole poker career that I asked for help with a hand history, and I thought it was a mutual thing, and then this person said, dude, I feel like maybe I should charge you for coaching. Out of all the people who have helped me along the lines, there has been one person.
Wow.
Yeah. So my point is that you befriending someone at the poker table, almost 99% of the time, they're going to help you out, and you're just going to luck box a new friend, just because as poker players, we're kind of solo and a little bit lonely at times. So someone reaching out makes you feel good, and you're usually going to be let's grab lunch. I can help you on this, or let's grab a drink at the bar and I'll help you with this. You know what I mean? And that's how you build a friendship in poker. So I'm just saying 99% of my friendships in poker have just came from either me asking for help in a hand, or me building a relationship off the felt, and then we talk poker. And some of my poker relationships, let's say someone like Dan Zach, who's my friend as well, right? I don't remember me and him talking about a poker hand other than when we would do around the felt. And this guy is amazing, right? But you have different friendships. Some friendships, guys that play 5'5" and 5'10", I ask them for help, even though I play bigger than them, right? I might be playing in the Legends room a 10 quarter game, or sometimes up to a 25-50 game at the Bike Legends room. But just because they play 5'5", someone like Jeremy Fremlin, I might send a hand history to him because I know he's amazing. Just because he doesn't play as big as I do doesn't mean that he's not capable or good enough to beat those games. It's just different reasons. He doesn't want swings. So the people I still send my hand histories to are incredible poker players. Just because they don't play as big or as big as I do doesn't mean that they're not as good as me or even better. Right. So, yeah, I go on tangents, Wayne. You know that from all the podcasts we do, but all the stuff kind of fits in.
Bankroll management is of utmost importance. Back in the day,
I feel like skip a part because at 2-3 people are gonna have roles, roles that are intermixed, and if you are staying ahead of the curve, you should be fine. And people probably heard us talk about bankroll management probably over 100 times. So,
okay, under bluffing rivers, what's your experience with river play in 2-3?
Yeah, think about the skill level you're playing at. You're playing 2-3 no limit. Players are going to be on the newer side. They're not going to be highly skilled. If you're trying to get someone to fold that top pair, I mean,
not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So paying attention at the table, knowing who are the call stations, etc. But like as a rule of thumb, under bluffing in the smaller games is a very good idea.
Yeah, call less rivers since players don't know how to bluff.
Yep.
One of the things that I notice is people, when a scare card comes, like something that completes the flush and the straight, and they bet large at the lower stakes, it can be a bluff because they're always scared if they have a nutted hand that they're going to blow away your opponent. And when they bet smaller and it's like a more nutted situation, then they tend to have it more. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if you're in your experience or sample size in that matter, or you just got unlucky. But like I tend to think that when these players have big hands, they're just betting big.
Okay.
Big hand, big money. Small hand, small money. You just kind of got to think about the player pool that you're in and their level of IQ of the game. And I still think that if someone's betting big on the river, for the most part, at 2-3, they're just going to have it. That you kind of have to be, unless like, and you're going to run into those maniacs at the 2-3 that are just putting in money. But you have to think like once you get better at poker, bluffing is tougher than value betting.
Yeah.
So like, who's going to be bluffing? The more experienced players. So for the most part, in 2-3, the players are going to be playing their hands, right? They have a pair, top pair, they ain't folding. They have top pair or better, they're probably going to be betting, and they're going to be trying to make money. Trying to pick out bluff combos, and obviously this is player dependent, and you're going to run into a guy who's just like betting all kinds of stuff. So you got to pay attention at the table. Wayne and I can't sit there and hold your hand. You have to be there. But for the most part, I think like when players are shoveling money in the pot, they're just going to be weighted towards value.
So the other thing too is the time of day you play is a big difference. So I propped in the morning. In the early hours, people tend to play tighter and more rational. As the day progresses, whether it's afternoon, late afternoon, nighttime, then people start getting, more loosey-goosey, eating a sandwich at the table, maybe going on tilt, playing a little more wild. And the most experience I had with 2-3 no limit recently in propping is always the night shift and occasionally on the day shift. So I am biased, like when the games are better, it's say 2 a.m. after people are drunk, or like 4 a.m. when they're stuck. Maybe they're a little bit more action, and maybe that's a little bit of bias from my point of view and experiences.
So the old expression, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, correct? So who are playing these day and morning games? When I play the morning and day games, they're usually tighter and tougher. And for me, some days I would play them, but they're quite boring. But you play at nighttime with the degens and people playing crazy, you're probably just going to be in some crazier and better games for the most part.
Another thing is call less 3-bet since players don't know how to 3-bet, and you will be against stronger ranges. Something like Upswing, I think, mentioned this recently. It's middle of October. It's like Ace Queen offsuit is a very, it's a hand that people misplay often. It looks so strong, and it is strong, but it's calibrated. If you have Ace Queen off and you get 3-bet by a solid player with tight ranges, your Ace Queen's in really bad shape, and probably doesn't hurt to fold, especially at the lower stakes.
Yeah, it's player dependent. Depending on positions, you can fold certain hands. I think for the most part, if you guys, understand what we're saying and the fact that it takes more skill to be bluffing, it takes skilled players to be 3-betting. So usually players at 2-3 are going to be 3-betting a linear range, and that just means usually stronger hands. Because it takes skill to be 3-betting the suited connectors or the ace-5 suited, or throwing in the merge 3-bets with the king-queen suited and the king-jack suited for value, right? Or merging a value bet or thin bluff, right? So it takes skill to know how to do that. So I think as a rule of thumb, when you're playing smaller stakes where people are not, they don't know how to 3-bet, you can just play tighter versus the 3-bet. I know at Theory, if you see that in whatever charts or whatever website, they're going to be like, no, you have to call this hand. That's just going to be plain out bad. You have to adapt to your players, and you have to adapt to your pool. And that's why Wayne and I did this. This is more player pool. Everything is about GTO the last few years because of Joey Ingram and Doug Polk and all that stuff. And all that stuff is good if you are playing against very good players. If you are sitting at a table, which I don't think you're going to be at, playing against Garrett, Andy, and all those players, because you're listening to a little podcast or video by Wayne and I doing how to beat 2-3, right? So like this is how you beat 2-3. So this is not listening to Doug Polk or Joey Ingram, because that is not going to be applicable for the tables that you guys are playing at, and it's essentially going to make you not win as much money as you should be by making exploits in the 2-3.
Do you have comments on 3-betting a lot, since players will not know how to handle 3-betting at 2-3?
Sure. I mean, to this day, getting 3-bet and you're out of position sucks, right? I mean, I don't like it. For one instance, Squish My Tomato, Mark, he commentates for a show. He's a very good player. Okay. There was a Euro kid that 3-bet him like 3 times in an orbit and a half. And then I just see Mark like 4-bet some ace-3 suited, which is a good combo to do with, or ace-4. And he flips over his hand. He goes, and he's upset at this point. You stop that right now. Right. So like you just see Mark lose his cool, because you felt like he was being bullied, right? And you, at the smaller stakes, you want to be that guy that's putting in more 3-bets. If you know what you're doing, don't just get the Jack-4 off and 3-bet it because JJ and Wayne said I should be 3-betting more. No, figure out which hands you should be 3-betting with. Figure out which recreational players or even pros are, maybe they're opening too light. So throw in some 3-bets, some king-queen suiteds, some queen-jack suiteds. Now, if you think this player is a nit, maybe you might throw in a
any 2. Okay, I shouldn't say that. No, I'm just joking.
Throw in like the ace-5 suited because it has some good removal, or you throw in the ace-queen off because you already know you're up against a tight range. Yeah. Maybe you know that this nitty guy is just going to overfold to 3-bets, because he's super tight. Yeah. So then you can throw in, but then again, it's a double-edged sword. This guy might be so tight that he's never folding to a 3-bet at all because he's got a super tight range. So you just got to know the players at your table. I would say by far, slam dunk, exploit, fold way more to 3-bets and be 3-betting a lot more. If you're doing these 2 things at your table, you're going to be crushing for the most part. Because if you're going to open the king-jack off from the cutoff and call 3-bet out of position or even in position versus these ranges of players that are just 3-betting strong hands, you're going to get crushed financially because these players just always have it. Whereas if you watch our high-stakes Friday game and you see Garrett 3-betting the 6-5 suited out of the blinds or the junky 6-10 suited out of the blinds, that's why you can see Andy calling or someone on the table, Chris Brewer, call with the king-jack off in position because he knows that these players are good enough to 3-bet the light hands. But in 2-3, they are not 3-betting the light hands, so you need a strong range. And you're able to 3-bet more and take advantage of weak players that are calling too much out of position. Those are very 2 slam dunks that you should be doing in your game. And you're going to be the toughest player in your game and probably the best 2-3 player in your game if you're doing those simple things.
Also, chopping is something I get asked a lot. Like if it's folded to small blind, the small blind gives $1 to the house, and then the small blind takes his $1 back, and the big blind takes $1 back. You don't play the blinds because the house is going to take $6 and then 1 for the jackpot. So this is why people chop. Keep the ambiance friendly. We all know when people get riled up. When you get people on tilt, that's okay. Gameplay gets pretty wild, but when people start, threatening to throw punches, that's when things, get rough, and it happens more in No Limit than the other forms of poker because you're dealing with, big bets and bluffs and stuff like that for a lot of money.
Yeah, talking from a mathematical standpoint too, Wayne, I know that when we had a Doug Polk week on Live at the Bike, he came back. It might have been him or Ryan Fear, Jason Less. I asked them, I said, what, it's in the commentary when we did the heads up special. I said, what's the edge and heads up? And pretty much versus like, even like a spot, you know, you don't have more than a 5% edge. So if the house is taking so much money, unless your opponent is a drooler, you're not winning any money. As good as you think you are at poker, you're just not beating even if you are better than the player that you're not chopping with, you're not beating the rake. So the rake is still going to beat you, even though you're beating me or Wayne, because you're an absolute killer at 2-3. Just chop, let the casino have the dollar, move on to the next hand. You know, if you don't chop, you're losing more money essentially.
Yeah, and of course, people who have played 2-3 with me know that sometimes I get out of line, but I am a very experienced player. I have studied a lot on tells and, you know, just witnessed a lot, and people have seen me get out of line and also call bluffs when they're out of line. Kids, honestly, don't try it at home. I've been playing a very long time, so that's what I got.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to rewatch. I think we're going to throw this on our new YouTube page and our Live at the Bike website, correct?
I think so. It's going to be in the liveatthebike.com archives, and we might make it in other places as well. But I hope you enjoyed it. JJ Garza, Wayne Chiang.
For sure. We know that most of you guys in the poker community, probably the game that you're playing the most is like the 1-2, the 2-3, some of the 5-5s. That's the big bulk of probably 98% of the poker players out there. This applies for all those limits, even the 5-5, which is viewed as a tough game. If it's a tough 5-5 game, which there will be some in Vegas, there will be some in LA. I've played in tough games. This is not as applicable, but if the game is a soft 5-5 game, any 1-2, any 2-3, you take all these points, you put it to your game. You're making infinitely more big blinds just by watching this. And, you know, take down your notepad, implement some of these things that you're not implementing into your game, and boom, instant free money from Live at the Bike.
And if you guys leave good comments, JJ and I just might do 5-5, no limit, next.
All right, guys. You guys have a great day, and we'll be live soon.
Take it easy.